George Keiser, Republican from Bismarck, state representative, joins us now. George, thanks for being here. How are you?
Hey, Scott, I'm doing great.
You feeling a little lonely these days? It seems as though we chatted with Governor Dalrymple about this. We have see some other Republicans, including our State Insurance Commission member, Adam Ham, and others have kind of peeled off this idea of the healthcare exchanges. And I know you're chairing the legislature's healthcare reform committee, but there seems to be mounting opposition on the exchanges. Would you concur?
Oh, absolutely, Scott. And I listened to your promo. I think I may be one of the most misunderstood people on this issue. The reality is the Affordable Care Act is a federal law. Now, I thought that the Supreme Court might take a different approach than they did, and certainly there is an upcoming election that could have an impact potentially on the Affordable Care Act. But when we were in special session and developed a law to establish a state-based exchange, it was a defensive move. We put in there plenty of provisions that would eliminate the law if the Supreme Court or the federal government were to change anything of significance in the Affordable Care Act. So what we supported during the session was minimalization of the impact of the Affordable Care Act through a state-based exchange, an exchange designed by North Dakotans for North Dakotans. Right now, we are in a position, because the legislature clearly did not support our engaging in the state-based exchange at that time, we are in a position not knowing, number one, what's going to happen in the election, but if the Affordable Care Act stays in play, we have two options left. One, a partnership act with the federal government, or just defaulting into the federal exchange. I can't understand how anybody wants, whether they're Republican or Democrat in this state, wants the federal government to implement their program in our state versus a program designed by us, for us, if we have to have one. If. And again, we put the provision in the legislation that said, Supreme Court, legislature changes it, we're out of it. We minimized it. Governor Leavitt began the state-based exchange in Utah. The Governor Huntsman continued it when he was governor. It's a program that I think if you looked at in detail, individuals, small employers, large employers, they like what Utah did. We modeled our program after theirs. We obviously, I would have preferred for the federal government to stay out of it and just to come to the states and say, you know what, you address your unmet, uncovered needs as best you can, and I'll guarantee you, Scott, North Dakota would have done a better job than any state in the country. That's what I would like. That's not reality. The reality is there is federal law in play at this time, and
here's my worry though, and I take your point. What you're basically saying is this is the hand we've been dealt. I'd rather come at that from a North Dakota perspective than having it crammed down our throat from the federal level. I hope I boiled down what you've said.
That's it.
Correctly. But I think we all it doesn't work that way. I mean, the federal government is going to dictate how this happens, and they always do, and they've done it in every level of welfare reform, and by the way, now undoing even work requirements. Isn't it naive to think we can do it the North Dakota way and just say the federal government we're going to do it our way?
You're absolutely right. They're going to dictate. Again, they were going to fund this thing initially out of the chutes, and then I assume transfer liability to the states, and in fact that was indicated. But they did give areas of flexibility. When we designed the bill, we made sure that agents and brokers were covered and protected. In Massachusetts, they're not. In Utah, they are. We wanted to make sure that we minimize the impact of, quote, navigators, which were required. The law said you can have you must have at least two. We had at least two, and only two. There were areas, Scott. Now, and again, what we did in the legislation, which people aren't accepting the facts, is we said, we're going to minimize this, we're going to streamline it, we're going to make it as least expensive as possible, given the law that we have at this point. But if there's a change, this all goes away.
Right, but then, of course, you spent the money already. One of the things Michelle Bachmann has said on this program and other places, don't spend a penny, states. Don't spend a penny implementing this. It doesn't go in place till 2014. Don't. And obviously there's efforts to defund it at the federal level with legislation as well, but she's made the point, you would have to spend money under your plan implementing something you hope is overturned, right?
Well, actually, not that much. The federal government said they were going to fund this thing, and as I discussed with the governor and the insurance commissioner during the special session, if we had passed a state-based plan with the provisions that we can back out of this, we literally didn't have to engage in much spending until after the election, the upcoming election. But it would have put us in the position to do it. Now we're in the position and to my surprise, the Supreme Court ruled the way they did, but if the election should turn out in a way that I think it won't, but if it does, because I've not always been 100% right, and the Affordable Care Act stays in play, the question is, do we get the federal exchange, or does suddenly the federal government say, oh, you know what, we're sorry, we're going to now give you lots of more time to all those states that said no?
Only for less than 15 seconds left, but do you see any hope your idea prevails here, or you have too many opponents?
No, it's not going to prevail. We're going to be in a position to default, and the one hope we have, as the insurance commissioner indicated at our hearing yesterday, was, well, maybe if the election doesn't turn out the way we like, maybe the federal government will give extensions. But
all right, out of time.